It's this one feature right here that I think is the best adjustment mechanism for any cordless trim router on the market. I bought the Makita Cordless Trim Router and I hate it, and I wish I never bought it. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to tell you why buying this was a huge mistake and I should have just trusted my gut and gone with the Dewalt. This right here is the corded Dewalt Trim Router, which I have owned for years. It has been phenomenal. I absolutely love it. I have zero complaints about it, but it has a cord. And I eventually got to a certain point where I was like, you know what, it'd be really nice to have a cordless trim router that I don't need to worry about the cord anymore, and I can just grab it and use it however I see fit. And the other benefit would be that I have two separate trim routers that can have different things put in them all the time. Now, before I get all the people that have been following me for a long time knowing that I use Festool and they have the MFK 700, yes, I have that. However, I pretty much use this exclusively in a horizontal manner in order to trim edge banding. I use these for all of the things related to standard routing. Now, the logical thing would have been for me to just go out and get the cordless Dewalt. However, for one reason or another, I ended up going with the Makita. Now, how did I end up doing that? If I loved this router so much, why did I end up purchasing this and now, quite honestly, regretting it and wishing that I had never wasted the money on it? And that is because I actually asked my audience for their input and feedback over on Instagram on what cordless routers they would recommend. Now, anytime it comes to any sort of cordless platform, the common thing is always going to be to go with what you already have a lot of. And the reason for that is nobody wants to have a new charger in their shop. But the harsh reality of it is there is no one tool brand that makes everything. And sometimes you have to branch out and get something else. Now, after so many people said that I should definitely take a look at the Makita for not only price, but quality, and Makita makes great products, so does DeWalt, I was like, you know what? Let's go take a look and see what we can find. So the Makita came in significantly cheaper than the DeWalt. And for some reason or another, when I was looking to purchase another cordless router, I couldn't find the DeWalt with batteries. I could only find the bare tool, and then I had to buy a charger and another battery separate. And that ended up being significantly more expensive than the Makita. Now, while I don't necessarily care so much about that, I was looking at it in the sense of, okay, I just want something that's a cordless router. Let's go with the less expensive option that got a lot of recommendations, and we'll see where it goes. Because I was adding a new platform to my shop, so it didn't really matter what brand I ended up going with. Well, I ended up going with the Makita, and in this video, I'm going to tell you why I hate that decision. So here are the two trim routers side by side. As you can see, they're both about the same size with the battery on them. I will say that I do have a 3 amp hour battery on here. This is a 5 amp hour battery, so if I was to add a 4 or 5 amp hour battery with DeWalt, it would make this significantly taller. One thing that I will say that the Makita absolutely has over the DeWalt is the weight. The Makita itself is significantly lighter than the DeWalt. It's also significantly more slim than the DeWalt. So I can almost wrap my entire hand around this one, as where I'm only getting just a little bit over halfway around this one. And I do think that that's an important consideration, seeing as how we are utilizing these just like this, right? So I would argue that the Makita is almost a little bit more easy to manage with just one hand. But when it comes to the profile of the two with the top and the battery, they're all the same. I mean, you know, they're all operated off of a battery, and they all kind of are a little bit big and bulky up here at the top. That's not my complaint. Overall, I think Makita wins in that aspect. The very first thing that I want to highlight is the base plate. So some people will look at this as a positive, and some people will look at it as a negative. To me, this is a huge negative that this is only a small circular footprint. The reason I don't like that, even though it doesn't matter basically where you're touching it, if you're riding up against a straight edge, it's going to be the same all the way around for the most part, with the exception of over here, which you couldn't even use because it's got this knob where you can put on and take off different attachments. So this gives you a little bit more freedom when, say using a pattern or leading off of a straight edge. You don't have anything to put your hands on if you're trying to stabilize this unless you want to get a lot closer to the bit. And I just don't like that. I feel like that is a miss from Makita or any company that only makes the circular base. Now, yes, I know you're going to say, well, Jason, you can absolutely buy secondary bases for this. Well, I don't want to have to do that. I want a router that gives me the ability to do both, and that's exactly what the Dewalt does. Because the Dewalt here has a rounded profile, but here has a straight profile. And the reason why I like this so much is because now I have two different options to go off of a straight edge. But more importantly, if I'm doing fine detail work, I can get my fingers further away from that bit, and I feel like I have more control because I'm manipulating the base plate that comes standard on the Dewalt. So that is the first thing that I really, really like about the Dewalt over the Makita. Now, number two has to do with adjustability of the machines themselves. So they're both variable speed. So if we look on the Makita, we have a switch here and it goes from 1 to 5. And we look on the Dewalt, it has a turn knob here from 1 to 7. Now, I don't know, realistically, they're probably both pretty close to the same RPM that they spin. So the Dewalt, it looks like it says it'll go up to 25,500 RPMs. And on the Makita, I don't see anything actually labeled on the router, but my assumption is they're both going to be very, very similar. So I don't really, I'm not going to fuss about that, right? They're both variable speed, that's fine. The thing that I don't love about it is the safety that's built into it, which I know is crazy for me to say because that's a great feature. So it has an unlock feature, right? So in order to turn this machine on, you actually have to hit the unlock feature first in order to do that. If I was to just hit the power button, it won't turn on. I do think that that's incredibly valuable for the fact that, let's say that you're holding it and, your hand accidentally hits the power button. Maybe it turns on, it hurts you, it could be a safety concern. So I'm not gonna fault them for putting that on there. Me personally though, for how I wanna use it, I don't always wanna have to worry about pushing two separate buttons. So that's a con for me. However, I can see it being a pro for a lot of people. As where the Dewalt, I just push the button and it turns on. It also stops instantaneously. Let's try that with this. So unlock. So that brings up the next thing that I really, really love about the Dewalt, and that is that it stops instantaneously. Immediately it stops. As where the Makita, still spinning, still spinning, still spinning, now it's stopped. Now that's not a big deal breaker, but for me, I have a tendency to utilize the router, and as soon as I turn it off, I want to be able to set it down, set it on its side, and I don't want to worry about it, if my hand was to come by that, it's gonna, I'm gonna hit it on the bit or whatever. As where with this, I always have the tendency to, as soon as I turn it off, I'm sitting here waiting, kind of like a random orbital sander, and when it finally comes to a stop, then I feel safe to set it off to the side. So the technology that's in this to get it to stop so quickly, I almost feel like that should be a standard feature in pretty much every single tool. If they can do it in this, they should be putting that in every single tool, in my opinion. Just to be fair, let's listen to the noise. I don't really care so much about how it sounds. I just want there to be good performance. But there is a significant difference between how it sounds. So let's do the Makita first. So overall, pretty quiet, and I don't have any bits in here right now for this video. I don't really think that they're needed. Now let's do the Dewalt. It's a little bit more of a high-pitched noise, but that's not really something that I'm like, oh, I would just love this more because it sounds a little bit better. So now I'm going to show you the biggest deal breaker for me between these two routers and why I think the Dewalt is just a much better option. Now, without question, the biggest discriminating factor for me is how you go about adjusting the depth of the router bit. So if I do this here, it automatically drops down. I don't like that because that makes this a two-handed process no matter what. And I'll have people that are going to argue with me and they're going to say, well, the Dewalt is a two-handed process as well because you have to hold the router. Sure, it is. But notice how nothing happened. Nothing happened when I unlatch this. It just is sitting there. If I wanted to take it off, I can't because it's tied into the side here. So if I go like this, now I can take it off. Very quick, easy removal. To be fair, I will remove the one on the Makita as well because it does just slide off, but it just falls down. So if I needed to make minor adjustments, I can't do that on the Makita unless I am holding the actual plate itself, and that's just annoying to me. It has a scale on here, which is almost silly to me because I find it that is completely unusable. Because one, if you put the router bit in and it's set differently than the last time you put it in, the only thing that scale is now used or is useful for, which is probably the reason it's on there in the first place, is if I wanted to go a 1/2 inch deeper, a 1/4 inch deeper, an 1/8 inch deeper. But you're relying on your eyesight, and where you can hold that to make sure that you're set exactly where you need to be. Now, they do have this knob here where you can turn it, and this gear actually drives in here, so that's kind of nice, right? But again, I've got to take it to where I want to take it, and then make sure that I don't move it at all as I close this up. And then for some reason, if I have to make an adjustment on this, and it's just a slight adjustment, I need to make sure that I'm holding that, open this up, and it already moved a little bit. And as soon as I move my hand, it drops down. I cannot stand that feature. I think that is just a very, very poor design overall. I do like the gear, and I like how it is easy to manipulate up and down, but there's too many opportunities for that to slip out. As where the Dewalt, all I have to do is turn this and micro adjust it wherever I want. As soon as it gets to where I want, I can let go of it. I can take it in any other position on the router, lock this down, and I know it's going to stay exactly where I wanted it. This right here, this feature alone is what made me love the corded Dewalt so much and made me go, okay, obviously I need to get this one, and for some reason or another, I ended up choosing this, and I regret it now. It's this one feature right here that I think is the best adjustment mechanism for any cordless trim router on the market. It is so easy to use. It can really be dialed in so easily, and because of that, that's why I just think that this router is a much better option. One thing that I have not mentioned yet, and I do want to make sure that I point it out, with a cordless trim router, I think lighting is pretty important. I mean, with any tool, really. One thing that I love about the Dewalt option is the fact that because it has the clear base plate, I do feel like it does a much better job emitting the light than the Makita, as where this head unit does block that light just a little bit. A very, very small gripe, but I just think that things are a lot easier to see with the Dewalt when I'm working on it than the Makita. And the other thing that I would like to point out is that you guys just saw, that light does stay on significantly longer off one operation versus the Makita. But what I will give the Makita is that I can turn that light on simply by pressing the unlock button. Maybe I'm just trying to line up a cut, and I do think that the Makita does have that edge there because I am able to activate it without actually turning on the router like I need to do with the Dewalt. So between these two routers, I absolutely should have just saved the money and bought the Dewalt to begin with. I already had experience with the Dewalt. I already knew some of the capabilities of the Dewalt, and now I regret that I ever bought this. However, I still do have a need for this in my shop. I actually now utilize this as a permanent router for the TSO small router table attachment that connects to the MFT. I actually have a video about this if you want to find out more information about it. But now typically this just lives in that. But I don't even love that. And the reason for it is because this is now sitting underneath. The minute that I open this up, this thing has a tendency to want to fall out. So, because now all of the weight is being pulled down. However, because I didn't want to just get rid of this router, who knows, maybe I'll give it to a local woodworker who could have better use out of this, and then just maybe end up getting another one of these and using it on that, because that router table is very handy to have where I can just pull it out and use it. So that's what I've been using this for. And if I had to do it all over again, to me, I wasted the money. To be fair, I do want to say that I don't think this is a bad router. I mean, it's a trim router at the end of the day, right? It is a small tool with a small motor that spins something really fast in order to give you an edge profile, or to give you a dado, or a groove, or whatever the case is, whatever you're trying to do. So I don't think that this is a bad tool. I don't think that Makita is a bad company. I think they're a great company. I just think that this is a superior trim router. If you can get over the slightly larger body, which me personally I prefer, and the slightly higher price tag, I mean, hopefully you saw the differences between the two and what I think is important, and why I would recommend going with the Dewalt over the Makita, unless you're just so diehard for one battery platform that you have to go with one or the other. And before I let you guys go, I want to share a funny thing about that. So I may have said earlier in the video, you know, there is no one company that makes everything cordless, right? So you're always going to end up having a need for something that the brand that you love does not have. In my case, Festool does not currently offer a cordless trim router. Therefore, I purchased one of these. Make no mistake, when and if Festool ever does release a cordless trim router, you better believe I'm going to have that in my shop, because that's the brand that I believe in. That's the brand I'm most heavily invested in. So of course I'm going to have that. That doesn't mean I'm going to get rid of this. It doesn't necessarily mean I would get rid of this. It would just mean that I have one more tool at my disposal to make things a little bit easier. But at the time of getting the Makita, prior to getting the Dewalt, I actually didn't have another battery platform. Fast forward to now, since buying this, not only do I now have a Makita charger, I also have a Dewalt charger, or multiple Dewalt chargers, because there are quite a few cordless Dewalt tools that I have, mainly for home renovation style projects, and I needed that battery platform. Oh, and by the way, I do have the Milwaukee nailers, and so those take Milwaukee batteries. So now I have 4 different battery platforms in my shop, so no matter what you do, there's really no getting away from it. Thanks.